Thank you for tuning in to Shared Hope International's Invading the Darkness, an anti-sex trafficking podcast. We want to acknowledge that the content we discuss can be emotionally challenging and may evoke strong reactions. The stories we share often involve tough subjects related to suffering caused by sex trafficking, which may be difficult for some listeners to hear. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey family, welcome back to Invading the Darkness, where we tell real stories that don't always make the headlines, but absolutely should. I am Yvonne.
And I'm Michaela. And today's episode is powerful. It's also heartbreaking, but most importantly, it's necessary. We're talking about what happens when the system gets it wrong, when children who need protection end up further traumatized by heavy systems-based responses.
And we're joined by someone whose story embodies that injustice and whose voice is helping to flip the script and the narrative. Sequoia is a survivor and advocate and someone we are honored to share space with today.
Yeah, Sequoia, we're so excited to have you here on the Invading the Darkness podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Well, let's just jump right in. Let's start with something that changed the course of your story. Your experience working with Joel, a trauma-informed lawyer. What was different about that relationship and how did that impact your healing?
Yeah, so before I met Joel, I honestly didn't think anyone in the legal system really cared about girls like me. I had already been through so much that I was used to feeling like just another case in a broken system. But it was through working with Joel that I realized that he was different and he didn't come in trying to fix me or judge me. He actually took the time to listen and he created a space for me to speak openly about what I had been through without making me feel ashamed of my story. And that alone made a huge impact. But what really stood out the most for me was that he saw me as a whole person and not just another case. And because of that, I felt safe enough to start letting my guard down and begin the process of healing. It wasn't just me having to survive anymore. I was really starting to believe that I deserved more than what I had been through. Trauma-informed care didn't fix everything, obviously, but it gave me a foundation to rebuild from, and it reminded me that I had a voice and that I mattered, and not just legally, but as a human being. And that was everything to me. Joel didn't just help me navigate a failed system, he helped me start healing from it.
Wow, that was super powerful, Sequoia. I love how you said it wasn't necessarily the trauma-informed responses that saved you or healed you, but it gave you that launching pad to get to the next level and the next level in life. That's really powerful. And I know that when I worked with survivors in the field, I always wanted to train attorneys like, Joel, who's already so informed. But I wish there were more Joels out there to understand that you're more than just what's on paper. You're more than just what happened to you. You're a person. And that he met you where you were, right? Without any judgment and just treated you with care, with dignity. So, thank you for giving us that example and kind of talking about that relationship you had with Joel.
Yeah, definitely. And that's exactly what I needed in that moment, was just somebody to step outside of the legal part of things and just see me for who I was and where I was and just to meet me there in that moment. And Joel did exactly that.
Well, even with the good lawyer, right? And Joel is an excellent lawyer. You still experienced something that never should have happened. You were placed in a DJJ facility, even though you were never charged with a crime. And that's exactly the kind of injustice we're fighting to end through the Just Like Me campaign. But looking back now, and this might be the hardest question in today's episode, what comes up for you when you reflect on that?
Yeah, so looking back, that part of my story is still obviously really hard to talk about because I was just a kid and I hadn't done anything wrong, but I was locked up anyway without any formal charges or really just an explanation for why I was in that situation. And the hardest part is that I didn't get any of the support or the resources that should have been available to me. At the time, I didn't have a safe adult advocating for my needs, and I really felt alone, like it was my responsibility to somehow navigate through an already broken system. And the truth is that this kind of thing still happens to girls like me, girls who have already been through so much, and instead of getting the help that they desperately need, they're thrown into places that only make the trauma worse. And that's exactly what happened to me. But that's why I talk about it now. Because what happened to me shouldn't happen anymore. And if my story can help someone see things differently, then maybe there's something good that can come out of all the pain that I had to go through.
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking that even had to happen, that it had to take place. It infuriates someone like me who has that social work background and loves being an advocate for kids. I just wish that there were victim advocates everywhere and that we identified the signs sooner so that, girls and boys like you can have the services that they need as soon as possible. Because even though you have a very unique story, this is still happening to kids all over the country. They're being misidentified, they're being mistreated, and we've got systems that punish survivors instead of protecting them, and that has to change.
Well, and that is why your voice is so important, Sequoia. I know that you stepped into advocacy and you've shared pieces of your story, but why do you think survivor voices are critical, especially for the next generation?
Yeah, I think survivor voices are powerful because we've lived it. It's something that we've survived, and that kind of truth carries weight. When we speak up, we're not just telling our stories, we're exposing cracks in a system that failed us and a system that continues to fail our youth. And for the next generation, especially, it's so important. I mean, they need to hear from people who've been through the life and made it out. And it's not to scare anybody, but it's to show them that they're not alone and that healing is possible. I sure didn't have someone telling me, like, you're not broken or you deserve more than this. So now I try to be that voice for somebody else, because when survivors speak, we don't just bring awareness, we bring change.
Yep, that is powerful. And that's the change that we need, because when survivor leaders speak, the rest of us should be listening and shifting and pivoting what we're doing in the field, right? That's the core of what the Just Like Me campaign and this podcast is all about. It's about learning from amplified voices like yours, Sequoia, which will lead to better informed responses from a bunch of different stakeholders who are trying to help survivors.
Yeah, and being a survivor leader myself, I like to hold my hand out and help the next one, and that's what we're doing here today, is helping the next one. And because we know what it's like to not have that there for ourselves, so there's just something, it's almost like you're taking back control and you're taking your power back and you're regaining something that was once lost, so but let's talk about where you are now. What does freedom look like in your life today? Not just on paper, but in your heart, your mind, and your relationships.
Yeah, I love that question. Today, freedom looks like not having to carry the shame of what I've been through anymore. I'm no longer defined by my past, but I'm given the opportunity to rewrite the script of my life, and there's so much freedom in that. I have an amazing partner who loves and supports me for who I am and not where I've been. He sees me fully, and I don't have to hide parts of myself or explain away my story like I've had to in the past. And that kind of love is healing in itself. My relationships are healthier, my mindset is stronger, and I feel like I'm finally living and I'm not just surviving anymore. And that's what freedom means to me now, being able to move forward without having to constantly look back or look over my shoulder all the time.
Yeah. And so what, kind of going off of that, what does it feel like to live in a space of more or less normalcy now, like real life in this way, but not being defined by labels or stuck in your trauma in the past?
Honestly, it just feels peaceful. For a long time, peace didn't feel like something I could ever have. And so living in a space of normalcy now means I'm no longer waking up every day feeling like I have to defend who I am or explain what I've been through. And I'm not carrying those old labels or letting trauma define me anymore. I still have hard days, but I'm not stuck there like I used to be. And now I get to just be a mom, a wife, a business owner, an advocate. I get to laugh without feeling guilty, or I get to rest without fear. I get to love without feeling like I have to earn it. And I just get to walk in my purpose. And every day I'm using my voice and my story in a way that brings meaning to everything that I went through. And that kind of normal, that's everything.
That really swells my heart to hear that from you. That's probably my favorite part in working with survivors and overcomers, really, right? And you've already lived through so much, but you still speak with a hope, like your voice is just bleeding, love and hope and peace. But what gives you hope right now? What fuels that fire to keep going?
I think what gives me hope is just the fact that I've made it. I've made it this far and I'm still here. I'm still standing. I'm still pushing forward, and nobody can take that from me. My kids give me hope every single day. I get to raise my kids in a home filled with love and intention, and I know that they're already getting the opportunity to experience a different childhood than I was able to. And I think that alone is huge. But what also gives me hope is that just the way that I can show up now, I can show up for other survivors, for people that are still trying to find their voice, and for anyone who's ever been told that they weren't enough. Because I've been in all those places, and now I get to live a life that isn't rooted in that pain anymore. I still carry it for sure, but it doesn't control me. Living in normalcy after trauma is surreal, honestly. It's hard to describe. It's things that people take for granted, for sure. Just like being able to sleep through the night, or not jumping every time a door gets slammed. It's having dinner with my family and knowing that we're safe. And it's just peace. And sometimes I have to remind myself that I don't have to constantly be on guard anymore, but I can just enjoy the moment. I can just live in the moment. And it's something that I never thought I would be able to say.
Your voice matters so much, Sequoia. Thank you so much for being with us, for sharing pieces of you, trusting us with your truth, and just for being part of the overall change that needs to happen, that still has to happen, if we want to keep protecting this next generation of kids, to make sure that they aren't exploited or misidentified or mistreated within the system. So thank you so much. You're incredible.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for creating a safe platform for survivors to be able to share their stories and to bring change.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. To our listeners, this is what it looks like to amplify survivor voices, not just feature them. This is what it means to rethink justice, to respond with care, and to make room for redemption.
If Sequoia's story moved you today, don't just feel something, do something. Take action and go to sharedhope.org to make sure that we keep amplifying survivor voices like Sequoia's. Share this episode, comment your plan to support youth-centered advocacy, and speak up for systems reform wherever you can.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Remember, check out Shared Hope's resources and share this episode to help raise awareness. We'll see you next time on Invading the Darkness. Until then, keep standing for justice and keep shining your light.
Thank you for listening to Shared Hope International's Invading the Darkness podcast. You can continue to listen and watch our podcast on all streaming platforms. To learn more about what Shared Hope International is doing and take action to end child sex trafficking, please visit us at